Thank you for tuning in to episode 236 of This Week in Real Estate, the T-Wire podcast. We're broadcasting live Wednesday, June 21st, 2023. Too early to party? This episode was brought to you by listeners and viewers like you. We don't have a Patreon or any way for you to send me money, really, so just take a second to hit the share button and let other people who are like you know about this show. Because after all, it is the viewers and listeners like you that make this entire thing possible. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, you can click the subscribe button and hit that bell so that you can be notified of when we go live. Then you can participate in the conversation. And if you comment, just like Matt LaMarche did there, he's saying, here, here. Then we can talk about you or talk about your comments. So thank you guys for joining us there. You can also join us on Clubhouse. We're broadcasting live today, and Clubhouse is actually going to be my co-host today. So shout out to the Clubhouse folks. Thank you guys for joining us. You'll hear a lot from them later, I hope. We've got a ton of stuff to talk about, but this podcast was mainly created so that you'd have one place to go to find the latest news with some succinct professional analysis from those of us who are in the field. So thank you guys so much for joining me on the first day of summer. So I'm super excited it's summer. Anyone in Clubhouse ready for summer?
Woohoo! Yeah.
So there they are. So I've got Clubhouse up on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or any of those other places, this is the Clubhouse room. You can find us if you go to the what's it called? Real Estate Networking Club. It's the largest real estate club on Clubhouse. And recently, Clubhouse has been getting a lot of like, oh, is Clubhouse still around? Yes, it's still around. So we still participate in discussions. We're still connecting there. It's not exactly what it used to be like, which is interesting. Used to, during the whole COVID pandemic and all that stuff that happened, we would get on Clubhouse. It seemed like every afternoon we were getting on there and we were talking about things to do and marketing strategies and stuff like that. And I think we've kind of all filled up on that kind of conversation. So it seems to be more current events that are talked about, maybe deep dives into some specific strategies. If you are into real estate or marketing, you'll find some stuff there. But I've also found a home in a lot of other things. So there's a cake baking club. And they talk about like, what are the big conversations was fondant versus like a marshmallow fondant versus traditional fondant. And it was a big debate. And so you could basically go find anything. But if you are in the real estate industry, I would suggest that you find some real estate clubhouses, participate in the discussions, see if you can make some connections, because we've created some lifelong friends there. So including Matt LaMarche, who's been on the show before. So thank you guys for joining us today there. Christina M. Smallhorn, she's joining us on the YouTube. And so she's commenting. She said Clubhouse used to be fun. It's still fun, Christina. You should come back. Patrick Ellis Home Inspections. Hey, man, he says he's excited for summer. Are you really excited for summer, Patrick? Because that means that you're going to be sliding under some crawl spaces that are incredibly hot here in Arkansas. But thank you guys for joining. Feel free to comment throughout the show. I'll be displaying those comments as we come back to them. But without further ado, why don't we get into the first article? Because a lot of news has happened. And as the news, it was really funny on Monday, I always search for news on Monday to see what's kind of happening throughout the week so we can be sure that we cover it during the show. And I really wasn't finding much. There was like one or two stories, but for the most part, they weren't real stories. It was just kind of like these anecdotal, here's what's happening in this part of the market, and here's a story someone shared. And it really wasn't a news story. And then yesterday comes around, and there were like three. There were three news stories that I said, well, that's actual news. And today there were two more. So I don't know if it's summertime and a lot of journalists are taking off, or if there's not as much going on, but it seemed like almost all the news today had something to do with inventory or builders. So it's going to be a real focus of the show. If you have builders that you work with or builder clients, or if you're a builder lender, then I would say that this show would be perfect for you. And so if you're around, I'd love for you to comment on it, especially. So drop it in the comments if you're watching the replay. But first up, let's talk a little bit about mortgage rates. So this story was on Fox Business's mortgage rates continue to come down. I'm going to share my screen as soon as that. They always autoplay audio. So hang on just a second. I'm waiting on it to load. All right, now I can pause it. They always autoplay the audio on the on that channel. So let me bring this up real quick. All right, there we are. So this story, it says at the top, mortgage rates continue to come down. This was at the end of the week last week. The average long-term U.S. mortgage rate fell again this week, but remained high compared to earlier in the spring home buying season, according to weekly data. The 30-year fixed rate on the mortgage at the time was 6.69%, down from 6.71%. Chief economist, Freddie Mac's chief economist, Sam Carter, said mortgage rates decreased slightly this week in anticipation of the pause in rate hikes hit by the Federal Reserve. Carter continued that as inflation continues to decelerate, economic growth is slowing and tightening cycle of monetary policy is reaching its apex, which means mortgage rates are expected to decrease later this year into next. So it's still, if you remember at the very beginning of the year, everyone was talking about mortgage rates being about 5.5 towards the end of the year. And we did have a prediction special where we were looking at those rates the year before. We were way off on what we thought the rates were going to be, just for confession. But everyone believes now that rates should continue to go down towards the end of the year. It says, in addition, the average rate on a 15-year fixed mortgage rose 6.1% this week from 6.07%. So that's interesting, kind of an inverse relationship with what's happening with the 15-year fixed. The Federal Reserve indicated it will likely raise rates 2 more times this year, which we have another story about that in a minute. But I'm not seeing a huge pullback from buyers. I'm also not seeing a huge jump from buyers. So if you're watching on YouTube, comment, well, tell me what's happening in your market. Are you seeing a whole bunch of people pile in? Are you seeing basically no change or no difference in what's happening? Because this was last week's data. So this week, the next article is from CNBC. Let's see. Mike V says, and Mike, you're in the clubhouse if you want to jump in the convo too. Mike C says, trading indicators on the 10-year yield shows declining trend. That's interesting. Olivier says he's still not certain. Sorry, it's not. That's not what he said. It's just in the way of my screen here. Let me move my screen around. Still soft in certain price ranges. What price ranges are? Is it the high end price ranges that are soft? I'm assuming it is, because it seems like the low end in our area is going like crazy. What's up, Howard? He just joined us on Clubhouse too. Okay, so this week, there's always a news story that comes out every Wednesday, if you want to know the pattern of what's happening. But the news story that came out this Wednesday said the weekly mortgage demand was flat. So interest rate drop for the 3rd straight week. So interest rates are continuing to go down, but it doesn't seem to be spiking activity. Total mortgage application volume increased 0.5% last week compared with the previous week, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association seasonally adjusted index. The average contract interest rate, 30-year fixed mortgage, that's a jumbo loan balance, increased from 6.8 to 6.79. The last time jumbo rates were higher was in December of 2021. So tighter liquidity conditions have prompted jumbo lenders to pull back, increasing the rates in the process. That's Joel Kahn, MBA's chief economist there. Applications to refi decreased 2%, while mortgage applications to purchase a home increased 2%, but we're still 32% below what it was last year. Now, the surprising piece that came from this article was that first-time home buyers, which you would think in a market where affordability is a real struggle, first-time home buyers, the applications were actually up. Matt Lamar says, "Con." Yeah, there you go. So the applications for first-time home buyers were up, which means that bottom third of the market, I guess that's what's happening, is that you have the bottom 1/3 of the market. Olivier says the mid to mid high is what's soft. So the bottom 1/3 of the market is still selling. So you have the many of the FHA home buyers are first-time home buyers. And so if you see the FHA loans that are still selling, basically, they're still trying to buy, they're still applying, then that explains why it's so much hotter in the bottom 1/3 of the market. Olivier with an interest rate prediction says interest rates will not go down as early as predicted. He said, "I see it not before the end of Q1 2024. So you're thinking the rates are going to remain higher for longer. That's what a lot of news commentators said 2 or 3 rate increases ago. You heard the words higher for longer a lot. All right. So anyone in Clubhouse want to jump in? We just did 2 news stories. One about last week, how the mortgage rates continue to come down. This week, again, mortgage rates are down, but you're not necessarily seeing an increase in most home buyers. Is that what you guys are experiencing in your markets?
Hey, it's Cindy Yuriona over in Salt Lake City. I can tell you what's happening here.
Okay.
We topped out June 22 at 650. And that month, 995 homes sold.
Wow.
We went down 18%. We lost 117,000, went down to a bottom at the end of the year of 535,000 for our average sales price. And in the February, March, and April, we erased 7 months. So we had a 7-month downturn. And in 90 days, we erased that 7-month downturn. So we're back up. Market is very hot, and numerous reasons. We're a top. Our jobs, we have I think last year we were holding, the lowest in unemployment in the nation. And we all know that real estate follows jobs. So that's what I'm seeing in Salt Lake City. Back to you, Ray.
That's interesting. Olivier, I'm trying to raise your hand here. I'm trying to, there you go. I think I got you. Matt, what were you going to say?
I was going to say the same thing as Olivia is kind of seeing 3 different segments of the market. The low end, middle ground, and then the top end luxury stuff. Bottom third, still hot as ever. We did see some people drop off due to interest rates and kind of the volatility there for a minute, end of last year, beginning of this year. But now that things have kind of settled down, to me as an agent, you get to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. Who's actually going to make a move? I didn't say that out loud.
But no, that's not a bad take, because the market conditions do kind of dictate the seriousness of the home buyer, right? So when you have rates that are still kind of high and prices / affordability is not great for a home buyer, and someone calls you and says, I want to buy a house. Well, they're more than likely more serious than they were a couple of years ago, when they were just trying to take advantage of a 2% rate and had no idea what they were doing, or if they were pre-approved, or what was going on. That's an interesting take. Well, Cindy, especially for you in your market, are you seeing anything happen in the upper end with those homes? Are they sitting longer in the luxury, or are you still selling because of the propensity in your area to be the kind of a vacation hotspot?
So we got 2 different luxury markets. Salt Lake's on one side of the mountain. Park City's on the back side of the mountain. I work both markets. My business is the last 3 years has been split 50-50 down the middle. So those 2 luxury markets are 2 different things are happening. We get about 80% plus of our Park City buyers are cash. And we had everybody put the brakes on when the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of price reductions. Then we've had this aspired pricing, and it's a mixed bag, because some are sitting and some are flying with multiple offers. So our head's still spinning in the Park City, which is primarily, began as a second home market.
Yeah.
It's now 50-50 on second home market. Our luxury in Salt Lake City, it really depends on the pocket and the neighborhood. 2/3 of the neighborhoods lost about 18% in value. So
wow,
our luxury got hit.
That's interesting.
Yes, but we have between 48 and 60% appreciation here.
Wow. So huge number of an appreciation, and as people see it come down a little while, I bet they're panicky. Well, home prices are decreasing. Like, whoa. We're keeping 80% gains that we've had. So that's really interesting.
and those who bought, which is 85% of the U.S. right now, have mortgages under 3%.
Yeah,
they don't want to let go of those. That's our challenge.
That's a news story that we also talked about last week too, with a lot of people keeping their homes, because the vast majority of people, I think a Redfin study said that the majority of homeowners have an interest rate lower than, I I think it said lower than 3% or something crazy, like lower than 4%. So they don't want to sell. They want to keep their home. Even if they buy another home, they feel like they could keep a home. So I guess the real reprieve won't come from anywhere except perhaps builders. So almost for the rest of the show, I guess for this big middle chunk of the show, we're going to be talking about builders. I should play my infamous wood. I'm going to, because it's my show. We've been talking about building prices for a long time, and we've been talking about the elevated building prices. As a matter of fact, I got a bookshelf for my office quoted pre-COVID, and I ordered it during COVID and had to stop because the price was incredible. It was about a $3,000 bookshelf. It's going to be kind of nice. It's got a little door in it and stuff like that. And I'm excited about it. And then I ordered it, and they said, yep, that's fine. We can still do it. Instead of $3,000 though, it's going to be like $12,000. I was like, okay, so I'm going to wait on that. And we also got a fence quoted about that time too. And the same type of thing happened. So I actually created a reel that talked about wood prices. And I think it's Matt LaMarche's favorite reel, if I'm not mistaken, Matt.
100%. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to play part of that, maybe all of that for you. And then we're going to talk about some materials prices, because I think this is apropos to share for you guys. Oh, wait, you can't hear it. Hang on. Now I got to actually share it. There you go. We are professionals here. All right, here we go.
Today's materials market has gone berserk. That's why you can't miss out on this deal. Here we have a house sitting on some land, but none of that matters. This thing is made of wood. This porch provides incredible shade, but that doesn't matter. This is made of wood. We have beautiful windows, let-in light, blah, blah, blah. Doors made of wood. Huge open living space, but most importantly, you're surrounded by wood. Wood wall, wood cabinet, wood ceilings, beautiful wood floors, wood beams, wood bedroom, wood loft, wood half bath. Look at all this wood. Now I know some of you may be wondering, Ray, how many millions is this property? It's no millions, and that's why you have to contact me for this incredible deal. Today's material.
There you go. So many millions for that wood. And that whole video was created because of what happened to materials prices. So let's look at what's happening lately. Matt LaMarche says you got to be careful with flames around the wood. Yes, absolutely. You got to be careful. All right, here's the building materials. This is great news. Building materials prices fall for the second straight month. Yay! But how far are they falling? According to the latest Producer Price Index report, the prices of inputs to residential construction less energy decreased 0.1% in May. So it fell like 10 cents. It's not seasonally adjusted. That's following a 0.2% drop in April. The index has gained 0.3% year to date. A stark contrast, though, from the 10.2% and 4.9% year-to-date increases seen in 2021 and 2022. So this is, sometimes you'll see those, reports that says home price gains slow. Okay, so this building materials prices gains have slowed. Okay, that's actually where we're at. And you can see the chart here. It says price inputs with residential construction goods, less energy. And you can see the huge increase that it had in Q1 of 2021 and again in Q1 of 2022. We're kind of flat. So it dropped a little bit, but we're just kind of flat. So the price I guess you could say it's less volatile, and less volatility means that builders are more able to predictably build properties, build houses, so that they don't have to worry about, okay, I'm going to build this house for someone, but is it going to increase my costs in the next 6 months by, 5% or 10%? Are my costs going to go through the roof? Do I need to order this whole package now? Or can I let this person actually customize some flooring as we get closer to close? Where are we in this? And if you remember, a lot of what was happening during the pandy is that someone would go under contract on a house and it would take them 12 months to build that house or 8 months to build the house. And so someone would go under contract, and then with what everything was happening, they could no longer afford the house because it was Now you have to input another $50,000 or $100,000 in some cases. And so they couldn't even close on the house that they said 12 months ago they were going to build for the price they were going to build it. And so builders were adding in these potential price increases based on materials prices. Well, then when materials prices finally settled, you had the same thing happening for a different reason: interest rates. Someone would sign up to have a home built, and as the home was being built, that rate was increasing. And then it was at 7%. And they're like, whoa. I can no longer afford the payment. Our debt to income ratio doesn't now fit. And I can't be qualified for the loan that I was initially qualified for before we started this whole process. So it became major issues. So as there's less volatility, there's more predictability. And although home prices may stay high because of the cost to build them, there's still an opportunity now for there to be more homes built because of the predictability and less volatility in both the building materials prices and hopefully the interest rates. This article goes into some detail about other products too. The producer price PPI for goods inputs to residential construction, including energy, declined 0.5% as energy prices drove the index lower. The index has declined 2.7% over the past 12 months, but is still 36% higher than it stood in January of 2020. And I think I've told this story before, but in December of 2019, new housing starts were up 13%, and we were all hoping that would be a reprieve for the inventory issue that we were having. And then just a couple of months later, it was a bad bloodbath. Just one more thing to look at, and I'll get some of your comments on it. Softwood lumber. The PPI for softwood lumber decreased 3.1%. This is good news for building stuff with wood. Back to the video that I played. Ready-mix concrete. Look at that. In January of 2020, it was 280. It is now right at 350. And it's just a steady incline. Ready-mix concrete prices were revised down in April in the latest release. As a result, prices declined last month for the first time since March of 2022. Unfortunately, price growth returned in May as it increased back 1.6%, the largest monthly increase in nearly a year. And steel mill products, that's kind of a weird M. It's if you are an audio listener, it's a weird M. It starts low at 2020, stays low until about October, and then it hops up in October of 2021, and then down and back up again and down, and now it's headed back up again, but not nearly as bad. So the low on this chart was 180 or so, 190. The high was 425 in December-ish of 2021, and now it's all the way back down to 325. So it does look like the increase of the prices of building materials has slowed, and hopefully that will help more builders jump into the market. Is this helping any of you? Do any of you work with new builders that are commenting on the build prices and the construction?
I do. And I've got a lot that's under contract now as a result of interest rate changes that significantly lower than it was a year ago.
Yeah.
But that's the reality. And honestly, just like a normal buyer, whether they're first time, downsizing, upsizing, doesn't matter. This is obviously going to have a continuing impact. I think we are seeing a little more activity, at least here in Atlanta, based on the interest rates kind of settling and people just figuring this is the new normal. They're, relocating still. They're upsizing, they're downsizing, and a lot of the first-time home buyers are kind of getting back into the mix. But yeah, with new construction, one of our neighbors actually bought a lot for $525 last year, and started going through the permitting process and everything. And then July of 2022 hit, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we can't afford what we wanted to build at 4,500 square feet, and now we have to build 3,500. So hey, builder, architect, back to the drawing board."
Wow.
So that kind of delayed their permitting process all over again. But looks like they're going to break ground here, at a quarter size less than they originally were.
But at least they're still breaking ground. That's the other side of that. Our price to build was just produced it was just talked about in the Business Journal locally, but our price to build is up like 30 or 40% of what it was versus 2020. So the price per foot. So it's still affecting our area. A lot of people think it's less expensive to build in places like Arkansas or just basically the middle of the country. And it is, however, the materials are generally less expensive on the coast because that's where they get shipped to, because so many of our materials come from outside of the US. So a lot of the materials cost due to shipping goes back up the more middle of the country that you get to, although the labor and land and all that is a lot cheaper, usually makes up for it. But we have an investor that's on the coast and like, whoa, that product here is like $250 and there it's $275. I don't understand. I'll just have it shipped. I'm like, well, if you do that, that eats up what you're talking about, the 25-cent difference. And that's why is because they're shipping from where you are to where we are. And that's why it's an increase in price here. But
sorry, real quick. The second half of the spec builds have basically all vanished.
Yeah.
All the builders, all the agents, all the investors that were building, like crazy this time last year, right before the interest rates really kind of changed pretty dramatically. They were buying anything they can get their hands on. They were paying ridiculous prices. We're still seeing some crazy prices, but it's one-offs. It's, super custom or semi-custom homes. Those guys have always wanted to do something. And now they're just like, you know what? Forget it. It's 7%, it's 6.5%, whatever. Let's just do it. We've been talking about this for years. But the spec builds are almost non-existent at the moment, at least here in Atlanta.
This goes, you're perfectly leading us right into the next article. It says double-digit declines for single-family permits in April of 2023. You are seeing far less housing starts right now. Year to date in April, single-family permits declined in all 4 regions. The Northeast posted the lowest decline of 17.6%, while the region reported the West reported the steepest decline of 39% decline in housing starts. Or housing permits, I guess you could say. Between April of 2022, year to date, and April 2023, except for New Jersey, all other states in the District of Columbia reported declines in single-family permits. So if that continues to happen, it doesn't look like the builders are going to save us, even though the materials prices are now dropping. Granted, this data is 2 or 3 months old, so maybe it has turned by then, which we have another story coming up. But maybe that's what you've seen, Matt, is that over this last year, there's been a huge decline in the housing starts. So when you're saying that those spec homes are gone, yeah, everyone wants to do a pre-sold. They don't want to do a spec home anymore. I had a client come into town to see some homes recently, and they're like, now in other states that we've looked, there are builders who are developing areas and they have a model home, and then we could just go look at the model homes and then see all the other homes. I'm like, yeah, that's not in Arkansas. There's only 1 or 2 builders that do that in the entire Central Arkansas area. And like, well, how do you see what these builders have? I'm like, well, you have to. That's what I'm here for. You'll contact me. We'll go see some properties that are on the market that they're already sold or under contract. And you can kind of look at those as the model homes, but they're not building a model home, and then setting that up with a person inside of it anymore. And they haven't done that here in a couple of years.
Hey, Ray.
Yeah.
Hey, so that same article that you're just mentioning in the Wall Street Journal, they talked about other central banks that are, continuing to raise short-term rates to fight inflation. And just like around the world, you've got most central banks are still going to tighten, even though we've paused. And you've got China, who's loosened things, and that's going to be inflationary. And so when the rates, or when that continuing, to fight inflation is going to drive the dollar down in terms of buying power, and that's going to increase commodity prices. So there's so many opposing factors going on right now. It's crazy.
Yeah. That is a really interesting take on it too, because we are getting so many building materials from China.
Just the demand, wood goes all over the world. And the article also talks about, declining demand in Europe and, all over as far as building starts.
Let's see, I'm looking for the numbers that I had on that.
In Germany, apartment construction fell by 37.9%.
Yeah. So construction around the world is down. Maybe that's why the building materials prices have stabilized a little bit.
Yeah, but if if we do drop interest rates, it's going to weaken the dollar, and that's going to cause all commodities to go up. Well, it's opposing the lack of demand. So you're going to have just price, based on the dollar value alone, it's going to affect the pricing.
Well, okay. So what is going to happen? Let me get to this Redfin article. Share this tab. There it is. There were fewer homes for sale in May than any other month on record.
So one of my local cities here, the population's just under 100,000. And last Friday, there were 29 homes on the market available.
Wow.
So, yeah, I don't know about that. Well, I mean, if rates do go down, I was thinking about that. Like, at what point, where do rates have to go where you have all these people that have 3.5% mortgages, where they're like, okay, I'm willing to take the hit and, move on to a bigger home or downsize or whatever they need to do. I wonder what that number is.
I mean, I think a lot of it is going to be people that don't move for leisure anymore. It's going to be the people that have to move. Kind of what Matt was saying earlier. It's going to separate the wheat from the chaff. Those that are serious about making a move are going to still be in the market and have to make a move because of jobs and everything else that's happening. But if you don't have to make a move, why would you in this environment? Especially if you're sitting on a 2% rate. I mean, we're thinking about adding on instead of buying new because we're at a 2% rate. Like, it would be ridiculous for us to sell our current property. And if we did decide to buy new, I'm not selling this house because they're basically paying me to keep it. That's sucking a lot of inventory off the market. That may be the reason why this Redfin article is so on point. The number of active homes for sale drops to the lowest level on record in May. Let me skip this to where the video of listeners can watch. Okay. So there's a red chart here. It's a bar chart from January in 2012 all the way to May in 2023. And since then, it's just kind of a hilly decline all the way down. At the time, there was about 2.5 million homes for sale in January of 2012. Currently in May in 2023, there's 1.3 million homes for sale. So the number of homes for sale fell 7.1% year over year. By comparison, there were 2.2 million homes in May of 2019. So there were actually more homes for sale during the height of the pandemic than there are currently today. Nearly every homeowner with a mortgage has an interest rate below 6%. That's what it was. Nearly every homeowner with a mortgage has an interest rate below 6%, meaning many are opting to stay put because selling and buying a new home would mean taking a higher monthly mortgage payment. Housing supply has already been lacking for years due to the steep drop-off in home building following the 2008 financial crisis. Do you guys remember that? Apparently that scared a lot of builders. The shortage intensified in 2020 and 2021 because of rock bottom mortgage rates and basically the inability for people to build efficiently at that time. But they talked about it was just more people wanting to buy homes. But that's not the issue. The issue was that so many people were wanting to buy homes that they couldn't keep up with the build, and they couldn't build because of supply chain issues. The median sales price is up 2.8% this month over last month. Year over year, though, it's down 3.1%. That's an interesting stat that you guys can take to your audience. The median sell price year over year is down 3.1%, but it's up 2.8% month to month. The average sale to final list price ratio is 100%. So homes are selling for what they're listing on average. So this is the intensity. We talked about this chart last week. The intensifying housing shortage is propping up home prices. Share this to the screen too so you can see it. Okay, so this chart shows you the median sales price. And in 2012, it's down. The change in median sales price is down. It's going negative. Same thing is happening in 2023. But as we know, the actual price is way over what it was back then. So while the percent change is showing a negative change, it's still way over what it was. I'm looking for the other chart. They usually show another chart that shows you the actual prices, but they are not putting that in this article, which is interesting. Here's another portion of this, the pending sales. Pending sales volume is down 20%. That's still up from being down 36% in November. So we have an issue. To summarize where we are, it seems like mortgage demand is flat. There's not a lot of people moving because they have a great interest rate on their current house. So the move up market and the luxury market is softening, as Olivier said in the chat. We have building materials that are falling. Well, it's 0.1%, so I wouldn't call it a fall. We have building materials that are stabilizing. We have double-digit declines in single-family permits. There are fewer homes for sale than any other month on record. So it seems like the perfect storm. There's only one thing that I think is going to help, and it has to be supply. So luckily, the next article says, bam, single-family starts post solid gain in May. Overall, housing starts in May increased 21.7% to a seasonally adjusted rate of 1.63 million units, according to a report from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is great news because here we see that, you remember, like I said, in December of 2019, we were excited about 13% increase in single family starts. This is a 21.7% increase. Now, I think we need that like 12 months in a row to make up for the amount of supply we're currently short. But it does show when all these factors combine, you have pretty strong economy. You have an environment in which your build prices become more predictable, interest rates are less volatile, and the builders can build with some confidence, knowing what price ranges they can absolutely sell in versus some price ranges that are softening. It's easy to see. But the question is, are they going to be building in the price ranges of where we need it? And I don't know. I think that's yet to be seen. The May reading of 1.63 million units starts is the number of housing units that builders would begin if development kept its pace in the next 12 months. Within its overall number, single-family starts increased 18.5% to a 997,000 seasonally adjusted annual rate. However, this does still remain 6% lower than a year ago. The multifamily sector increased 27.1% to 634 unit pace. Here's another good chart on there too. This chart is a stacked graph, and at the bottom is the single family units in blue. At the top is the multifamily units. And you can see basically it shows you the percent of housing units and how it's grown since 2013. It was maybe half and half single family, and now it's a little bit more on the multifamily. And this could be in part because of the changing ways in which people live. Are we really seeing the same number of people want to move out into the suburbs, or are we still seeing urban infill and people wanting to move back into the cities now that the pandemic is over? Olivier says, if there are so little sales in the market, many agents will suffer financially soon, and we're starting to see that here. Are you seeing a big pullback in the number of existing agents, Olivier? I know you're on Clubhouse if you want to chat it up.
We lost, we were 17,000 in my province. We lost 940 at permit renewal, which is what, like 6%, but we're 33% down on the volume of transactions. So the pie is getting smaller, but the same amount of people are eating it. So some people are starting to see a drop in revenue that's pretty substantial.
So if you're an agent in the marketplace, if you can gain share in a market in which overall pie size is diminishing, then when the pie turns around, then you will have a massive share of the market. When it's easier for everyone else to enter, if you spend the time now gaining market share, then you're basically going to have a foothold in a lot of places But if you also back up, if you take a step back, if you change careers, I guess there's no hope. If you're changing careers, it's over. unless you come back on the next upswing. Whenever rates go back down to 5.5% and the market takes off again, like it did in 2021, that would be the time for you to jump back in. But for now, you're going to take a break for a couple of years. There's a lot of housing experts that say that the 7% rate, close to 7%. It's not 7% now, but the 7% rate that we have right now is a good time for buyers to buy because there's far less competition in the marketplace, especially in those softening markets in the upper tier. And whenever they do buy, if rates do go down, then they could always refinance. You'll hear people say, marry the house, date the rate. And for some reason, the contrarian point of view says, oh, that's terrible advice. But the real advice is if you need to move, then buy a house. And if you get a 7% rate and your plan is to refinance in the future, great. If rates go down, you can refinance. If rates don't go down, then you bought at a lower rate than it would have been later. So I think you're still in the money. Now, if you're buying for a short time period, I remember back in 2028, 29, even 2027, we changed our advice. There was a big switch in advice. Used to, in 2005 and 6, people would buy a house and sell it within a year or two, and they would be totally fine because of the increase that happened in their price. And they could get out of their house fine, even if not pocket a little money. Well, then in 2007, 8, 9, as the market started to go down, they could no longer buy and then sell in a year. They had to buy and then keep it for 3 to 5 to 4 years. And so we changed the advice we gave. Well, it seems like I am changing my advice now too, in which people are like, I want to buy and sell in a year. I'm like, it's probably not a good idea. But that's only for a very short time. Like during 2021, 2020, 21, and even 22, you could buy and sell in a year and be okay. But I don't think today you could buy and sell in a year because we're starting to return to what feels like, in my opinion, to be a normal market. You remember the average days on market in many markets used to be 90 and 120. And for a short time there, it got to 30. And so if you weren't selling a house in 30, there was something wrong, or there was there was an issue. Well, that's not the case anymore. Now houses are taking longer to sell. There's a little bit more days on market. And unless it's a unique property or one that's super cute and priced just under market value, it's going to sit a little bit. And I don't think that's strange. I think it's okay. But there's also a lot of sellers, like Cindy said, with aspirational sales prices that are just never going to get that price. They're going to have to make some quick drops in order to stay relevant on the market, or they're going to chase it down. Dusty Martin is on YouTube. She says, my advice has always been to buy for at least 7 to 10 years and just treat it like the latest craze as a temporary bonus, but to always have a good exit plan. Yeah. That's the change that's happening in the culture, is that most people are now living in their space for 5 to 10 years when previously it was a solid 3. Everybody move every 3 years. Okay. So we do see most of my reports today are coming from the NAHB and from Redfin. So this next story is builder confidence. It moved up. So it moved into positive territory in June. So solid demand and lack of existing inventory and improving supply chain efficiency, which is all the things that we just talked about. It shifted the builder confidence into a positive territory for the first time in 11 months. Builder confidence in the market for newly built single-family homes in June rose 5 points to 55, according to the National Association of Home Builders Wells Fargo Housing Market Index. This marks the 6th straight month that builder confidence has increased, and the first time that sentiment levels have surpassed the midpoint of 50 since July of 2020. A bottom is forming for single-family home building as builder sentiment continues to gradually rise. This month marks the first time in a year that both the current and future sales components of the HMI have exceeded 60. 25% of builders reduced home prices to bolster sales in June. That share was 27% in May. and 30% in April. It has declined to steady since peaking at 36% in November 2022. The average price reduction was 7% in June, below 8% rate in December, and 56% of builders offered incentives to buyers in June, slightly more than May. It's still June 21st. What are they telling us in June? It's still June. It's okay. I guess that's when the report came out, but it probably means beginning of June data. I'm actually not sure now. It's also funny that I had to look at the date to make sure it was still June. Looking at the 3-month moving average for regional HMI scores, the Northeast edged up 2 points to 47. Midwest increased 4 points to 43, and the South moved up 3 points to 55. The West posted a 5-point gain to 46. So all of them are gaining. So builders more confident now. Olivier said, I'm at 14 years in my current house and not planning to move. Paid $350K, worth close to $900K now. Did $175K improvement in repairs so far. Nicely done, man. I think we've only been in our house 5 years, 4 years, something like that. And we've probably put in around 80K. We're thinking about doing an add-on, but I think we bought it for $250 and it should be worth somewhere around $450 now. If we finish and put in an add-on, probably it could be $550. So that's a good return, in part because of everything that's happened through the COVID pandemic and the limited supply. Now, I don't think that as more supply comes on the market that we're going to lose that gain either. I just think we're not going to see future gains nearly as high. Home price gains slow, if you will. All right. Anybody want to share anything about that? The home builders? No? Okay. Just want to make sure if somebody has something to say, I don't want to miss it. Sometimes I miss the hand raises. So, all right. So this next story is about Powell. Powell expects more Fed rate hikes ahead of the inflation fight, and he thinks we have a long way to go. So this wasn't necessarily in a real estate section, but I think we've all been watching pretty closely Powell's move on the economy, and last week what he did to increase, or not increase, but he stayed the same and then pledged 2 more increases towards the end of the year. Most people believe that those will be 2 quarter-point increases, and totaling a 0.5% percentage point through the end of 2023. That would indicate 2 additional hikes, assuming quarter-point moves. The Fed's benchmark borrowing rate's currently pegged at a range between 5 and 5.25. He noted that inflation has cooled but remains well above the Fed's 2% target. Inflation has moderated somewhat since the middle of the year, he said. Nonetheless, inflation pressures continue to run high, and the process of getting inflation back down to 2% has a long way to go. Fed officials generally prefer to look at the core inflation, which excludes energy prices. That's showing inflation running at 4.7% year to year. For most of my life, people would always assume inflation was like 2%. 2% inflation every year, 2%. You want whatever investments you want to make. You want to get ahead of, it has to be better than 8% because you have all these taxes on it, and plus you're going to have 2% inflation. Well, that's been really high lately. So hopefully your investments are faring way better than that 2%. He says, given how far we've come, it makes sense to move rates higher, but to do so at a more moderate pace. So it looks like rates are going to continue to go up. How will that affect home prices? Well, the Fed has come out and said that he wants home prices to go down. He actually said that he wants a correction in the real estate market, which is a 10% decrease. So I think if he's trying to push housing down, it's going to have to be more than a quarter point because housing is so strong right now, in part because we don't have the same lending policies or practices that we did back in 2008 and 2007. And a lot of these crash bros that are on YouTube are coming out and saying, oh, this is the beginning of the end. And they're comparing that chart that I showed you of the decrease in home prices that Redfin produced to the current decrease in home prices and saying, see, it's the same. We're about to crash. And that's just not the case. The increase that we've had so far has been so massive that a slight decrease is not going to make a dent in current home prices, and the way lenders are lending money is very different than what it was. Now in the commercial sector, I think that could be a different story. And will the commercial sector come over and affect the residential sector only in the tightening of lending constraints from regional banks? I think that's the biggest concern that we have. I think otherwise the commercial sector, you're going to have some big companies, holding companies that may be in trouble, but I don't think it's going to affect your average consumer very much. Unless there are entire companies and businesses that go out that do something besides hold office space. But for the most part, a lot of people have become cloud operators. They're involved with the cloud culture. So I don't think it's going to have the same impact as as the residential demise did on commercial back in the day. Dusty, talking about the Fed, says the ironic part is that this dude thinks making it harder to buy a home will solve an inventory issue. He's basically trying to suppress the buying side. It's supply and demand, right? So he's looking at two charts: supply, demand. Supply is down, demand super high. So how do we lower demand? Instead of focusing on ways to increase supply, which is really what we need. But that could also go back to a mindset. You know, you have left and right, you have policies, you have people with different ways of thinking. You know, a lot of the people on the right have this trickle down economy, right? They think that if you let people who pay a lot of taxes pay less taxes, then they'll do more things. Like I know for me, when I got a chance to pay less taxes, I hired some people. So I put money back into the economy. Those people didn't have a job. Now they have a job and now they're making money. So hopefully they'll spend it. And that's kind of what they're saying. There's also a lot of people on that side that's like, oh, we should switch to a consumption tax. So no longer are you taxed on any income, you're just taxed on the stuff that you buy. The people that buy more stuff get taxed more. So if you don't have much money and you're not buying much stuff, you're not going to get taxed as much. And there's also ways to kind of influence what is purchased and what is not. Well, there's also another side that's like, well, we need to decrease the demand on housing, because if we increase the demand on housing, then it's going to allow for more development. More development means things like more pressure on utilities, more pressure on the greenhouse gas emissions, because they're going to be cutting down trees and building, you know, developments and complexes and things like that. So there's different philosophies, and I don't know which one Powell thinks of, but he's looking at the buy side. He's looking at the demand side and wanting to tamp the demand side down instead of finding ways to increase the supply side. And I think it's just a difference in philosophy. Or anyone want to jump on that bandwagon? No, it's cloud culture. I coined this phrase when I think it was the show with Kennan. What was that, 2 weeks ago? Cloud culture is a phrase that I coined. So just whenever you use the word cloud culture, I want you to put it in quotes and put - Ray Ellen. I'd appreciate that. Dusty says exactly, but we don't have enough homes. Less might be able to buy and decrease primary residence demand, but that means investors will need to buy more rentals, and we just don't have enough. I would agree with that. Olivier said you're basically a tightrope, and if the balance is changed, boom. Yeah, boom one way or the other. A housing boom or a housing implosion. All right. One more article for today. And this is just the only reason why I'm covering this is because I want to remind people and kind of warn. We have a lot of real estate agents that watch the show. And I just want to make sure you guys are not calling the do not call list. So this is your reminder. Keller Williams agent hit with a class action telemarketing suit. So Keller Williams and an agent. It says Keller Williams and agent. It doesn't say and agents. Keller Williams and agent. So months after Keller Williams Realty agreed to pay $40 million to settle a class action lawsuit alleging its agents made unsolicited pre-recording calls to consumers without their consent, a major real estate franchisor is facing another similar suit, along with one of its agents. So Keller Williams came out and said, no, we tell our people not to call the DNC, the do not call list. Brittany Gayton says Keller Williams directs its realtors, such as Gayton, to make unsolicited. Oh, this is what they say in the complaint. This is not what Gayton said. Keller Williams directs its realtors, such as Gayton, to make unsolicited telemarketing calls to solicit their services. The complaint says the call utilizes pre-recorded messages. Keller Williams also directs realtors to send unsolicited telemarketing text messages. I think we've all been in a lot of these, if they're still teaching that, that's dumb. But it may have been taught years ago. And I've been in trainings where I've heard people say, oh yeah, use slide dial or slide broadcast or whatever it is, where you could just bypass the phone and go directly to their voicemail. And now there's lawsuits for that too. So just because someone's on a do not call list, you can't just mean, well, I'm just going to drop them a voicemail instead of calling them. That will also get you into trouble. Or you can't just, well, it says do not call list. It doesn't say do not text list. Unsolicited text messages can also get you in trouble. So whatever phone numbers are registered, you need a way to scrub it and get that off there. You don't want to be calling the do not call list. So this is your reminder, and we'll continue to kind of keep an eye on this one, see if it develops into another class action suit. It is hit with a class action telemarketing suit. So they've already, I don't know if it's been granted class action status or not. They filed the complaint seeking class action status. So it has not been granted that status yet. This is in Las Vegas. All right. Well, thanks guys for joining us this week. Anything that I missed? I think I got it all. But is there any big news story this week that you're like, oh, did he cover this? I don't think so.
I know someone mentioned earlier in the comments, I can't remember if it was YouTube or Clubhouse, but you guys didn't go too far into the no change interest rate thing last week, right?
Yeah, we did. I mean, we covered it at the very end of the show because it happened right at the end of the show. But we just basically said, hey, no change. So I guess there's no change. I mean, that's whenever there's no change, like what's the news? So
I don't know. Fox News and CNN and MSNBC still have 24 hours to fill. So
they do.
Figure something out.
But it was a really it was really funny. The biggest news that came out of that was that he's potentially raising rates twice in the months following, or in the meetings following. I think that was the biggest piece of news that came out of the whole commentary. They didn't really, I mean, he believes that inflation is still not in control. It's higher than he wants, and he's going to be raising rates in the future, but he's not now. I think they've raised rates, 11 consecutive times or 10 consecutive times. And they just wanted to kind of give it a breather to see what they've done. Because everything that they're looking at are lagging indicators. So they have to kind of wait to see what measures they've done. Now, personally, if he's trying to solve for inflation, I don't think he's done enough. I mean, I would have said you have to raise another quarter point at least. And they got into trouble because they didn't act fast enough. And that's why they're having to do the 10 consecutive rate increases, because they weren't acting fast enough throughout the boom and the bust and everything that happened. That's why we're going through this. So I think they may be wrong again. I think they probably should have increased it another. If they're trying to get it under control quickly, then that's how to do it. You have to raise rates. And they're looking at two things again. They're looking at unemployment, and then they're looking at how many people are ordering stuff, right? And the more people that order stuff, the higher the prices are going to go, because the producers can't keep up with the stuff that's being ordered. So they hire more people, but you get to this place where the people that want to work are working, and there's still more and more people ordering stuff. And so prices go up. That's what inflation is. And that's what they're trying to prevent. And that seems to be still happening. It's just happening at a slower rate, but it's still happening way over. It's happening double what their target is. So if this was an environment 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 10 years ago was a bad time. let's just go 20 years ago. If this was an environment 20 years ago, and we're at a situation in which inflation had doubled in a year, well, they would probably change rates a bit. And he didn't. He's looking at a 4.7% versus a 2%, saying, well, we'll hold off and see what happens. So I think he has to go at least twice. I think if he did a quarter point this time, he may not have had to do the other two in the future, but it's just, who knows for sure. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I thought he would, based on all the economic indicators and how good housing's still doing, for sellers, how good the jobs market is, how many produced people are still ordering. I felt like he had to do it again, and he didn't. So everybody priced in had already thought that nothing was going to happen. And sure enough, he came out and it was a big nothing burger. So All right. Well, that's all I got for this week. Thank you guys for joining me. This was an interesting experiment to have just me as the host. I don't think we've ever done a show in which I was the only one here. So I appreciate it. And I wasn't the only one here because I was joined by so many great people on Clubhouse. So thank you guys for joining us there and for joining us in the comments. I really appreciate it because it makes this way more interesting to have live feedback from people. That's why we don't do a recorded show, because I could just record this whole thing and then just spout the stuff and be done with it. But that's not really what we're looking to do. We want to create one place where you can come for some professional, succinct analysis of exactly what's happening in the marketplace, and also a discussion with other professionals and industry pros that are around the world. So thank you guys for joining me this week. You can find me at Razorback. That's RAYZORBACK. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye. Oh, we got a fun guest coming up next week too, so you don't want to miss it.